What's going on, everybody? We're back to you for another edition of Chamber Chat, and we're so excited to continue to check in with members and learn a little bit more about how we're all going to rebound the region. And today we're joined by Jocelyn with Arara Language Solutions. Jocelyn, I think I pronounced that correctly. I'm doing the best I can, and so glad for you to join us. Just some tidbits for folks watching the video. Arara serves 60 languages and growing, and they do so many dynamic services and so many great things. And Jocelyn's got an unbelievable resume and background. And they were the 2019 Small Business Award winner in the micro business category, have been nominated numerous times over the last couple of years for awards. And Jocelyn's been a small business advocate winner as well. So such a dynamic company in this region as we all look to rebound. Jocelyn, how are you? Great to see you. Give us an insight. We talked a lot before we recorded on what you do. Give everybody kind of brief synopsis on what Arara does and just there's so much to talk about. So it's going to be tough to make it brief, but I know you're going to be able to do it. So great to see you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Yes, first of all, I love what I do. And we love what we do. Arara is an amazing team of contractors, and we provide interpreting and translation services. It's professional language interpreting and translation services. And we are already doing actually more than 70 languages. We keep updating the website, but we are growing faster than the website designer is putting on, sorry. But you did great. The Arara was amazing. Your French studies, came through. But Arara actually is not an English word, so maybe that's why it's harder for the English speakers to pronounce, but it's an amazing word. Arara actually in Portuguese and some Spanish-speaking countries means macaw. That bird which repeats what you say? That's how we do in more than 70 languages. Arara is also the name of a minority group in Cuba, and Arara is also the name of a tribal language in the Amazon. So we thought that the name described exactly what the team is about. We are very diverse. Most of us volunteer in the community because we have the language knowledge and the language skills. So we help and aid communication, growing the community. And we provide interpreting and translation services serving the community. So for school systems, for the court systems, for medical facilities. And as I mentioned too, also, volunteering. And when we talk about interpreting, I don't know if you knew, but there is translation. That's what we do as well. So that's when you type a document, you translate it from one language into another. And interpreting is actually, there's 3 types of interpreting. So we provide simultaneous interpreting. So if I'm in court, the judge is speaking and I'm interpreting at the same time, the person's, by their ears, or in a conference. So I'm interpreting for a conference. I did one a couple of years ago in New York City where I'm wearing the headphones. Nowadays, they're a lot smaller, but I'm wearing the headphones and everybody can hear what I'm saying at the same time, so simultaneously. Some languages you have to wait a few seconds. So like some languages, the languages I do, I have to wait until I get the verb. As soon as I hear the verb tense, I can start interpreting. So it's kind of challenging because you have to keep listening, but keep it flowing. So I'm interpreting, but I'm actually keep listening. It's a very amazing skill that one can grow in, but it's also a gift for you to be born being able to do 2 things at the same time. We also provide consecutive interpreting. So when I'm in court and then the defendant is speaking, for the judge and all the attorneys to hear the defendant, then I'm actually waiting for him to finish or her, and then I interpret. That's called consecutive. So as soon as he's done. So another great skills for interpreters is shorthand writing. So we actually take notes that would trigger your memory to remember exactly what was being said. That way you give accurate interpretation of what was spoken. And sight translation. So the judge might say, can you read this document for him in Portuguese? So I read it in English, I'm using my sight, but then I'm interpreting in Portuguese. That's called sight translation. So those are 3 types of interpreting, if you guys didn't know. People use interchangeably, but it's actually different. So translation is the written communication, interpreting is the oral communication.
Yeah, it's just sitting here listening, and as we discussed before we started recording, you're right in the fact that it's such a gift, because it would be extremely challenging for me to try to jump into all the great things that you do. And just to hear the different ways that you have to communicate with people, it is so important. And you mentioned that, language is dynamic and it's culture, learning cultural differences and ways to communicate is so important. So what would be, and, one thing that you mentioned is learning a couple words a day. If you're really interested in learning a new language, what would be your biggest piece of advice for, we'll say, somebody like me or anyone that wants to learn a new language? and really dive into the importance of it. What would be your biggest piece of advice?
There are a couple. One of them is keep it humble. So no matter how many languages you already speak, keep learning. Because if you think that you got to a point in your life that you know everything, then you might sound snobbish, but at the same time, you're cutting yourself short. If you keep your brain thinking all the time, most likely you won't develop Alzheimer's because you're using math to do your checkbook or to work, but then you're using the other side of your brain because then you're doing languages. But use this opportunity that we have the pandemics. That's what usually happens to me in my life. Use something that the circumstances don't look very good, but then my mom used to say, the circumstances should change you. You should change the circumstances. Mm-hmm. So when I saw that Brazil and the South American countries were closing a specific marketing agreement among the countries, so like they're trying to keep the importation taxes low among themselves, pretty much like Europe did with the euro. So they did it in South America. I was like, I'm going to learn Spanish because Brazil, I'm from Brazil, we don't speak Spanish in Brazil, especially because of our soccer, rival with Argentina. But, now it's a global world, everybody's speaking. But I was like, I'm going to learn Spanish. And then when I moved to the US, I couldn't afford going to college because I didn't have any scholarship or loans. I was like, you know what? I'm going to learn another language. So I took French. What I do today is just I'm trying to learn another language, Korean, but I also read something that is not my mother language every day. So I teach ESL and I tell my ESL students, because it's part of what we do a lot of volunteer work. If you can learn 3 new words a day, at the end of the year, you learn over 1,000 words. And one more tip that I shared with you is just if you learn another language, try not to translate. So if I said something in English and then you translate, something Spanish, you translate into English, think about the answer, and then you answer to me. This is time, and time is money. So what we're going to do, try to learn synonyms. So use a thesaurus or something, because most likely the root of that word is similar to the language you speak, especially if you're studying something that is within the same root, like Romance languages or Latin-based languages, like would be Spanish and English. But that would be my advice.
Yeah, no, and it's great advice. And again, just so appreciative of the insight that you have when it comes to what you do. You mentioned that it's such an amazing career that you've been able to accomplish since you mentioned your first job as an interpreter in 1991. So over 20 years of just dynamic creativity experience. What would be your message to the region and to the community right now as we're all working to rebound the region as kind of we wrap up, Jocelyn?
Sure, my pleasure. So what I think is important, and thank you again for doing this, because as I was listening to the other chats preparing for today, and even listening because on my feed on Facebook, I learned a little bit more about each business in the community. So this is knowledge, and knowledge is empowering. Another thing is people to know that this service, the interpreting and translation service, is available right here in the community. We are based in Roanoke. We have interpreters and translators spread at over the country, but we are based here. Most of our contractors are here in Roanoke. It's just that service is available and often covered by insurance. And then if you're working with a federal, any government agency which receives federal funding from the federal government, they have to provide the services. So language communication is empowering. It's super important if you go to the doctor to know exactly what your diagnosis is. So for the doctor to know exactly which medication you're taking. So if he prescribes another one, there is no medication interaction that might be negative to your diagnosis or your symptoms. So thank you for helping us know a little bit about each other. I think it's super important to keep your knowledge about the community, what our community offers. Keep communicating. If you cannot communicate in that language, look for a professional interpreter or translator. And another thing, keep united. If we keep the knowledge about what we service, maybe in 2-3 months, I know, oh, I need this. Oh, yeah, that chat, they offer exactly that service. So keeping our economy, keeping the funds, the investments here in our economy, that's how we're going to grow our community stronger and stronger, and keep it positive.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And I'm so grateful for your insight today on this version of Chamber Chat. So to learn more about Jocelyn and Arara Language Solutions, you can find them through the Chamber directory at roanokechamber.org, directory button right in the top right-hand corner. Also at araralanguagesolutions.com. So great. Thanks for joining us, Jocelyn. That wraps up another edition of Chamber Chat. We're going to keep it rolling. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay positive. and we're going to all work together to rebound the region. We'll talk to you soon.